So I've been tossing around the HP Victus for around a year now, and I'm going to talk about some things that I love, some things that I don't like so much, and then even get into some of the 12th gen i5 benchmark results, so you can see if maybe just going ahead and choosing the last year's model versus maybe choosing this year's model, you can just kind of sort all that out. First and foremost, let's talk about the build quality. One thing that I gave a quick shout out to in my 6-month review was just the screen flex. And it's something that still, every time I get a hold of this laptop, it just drives me a little bit crazy. It's wobbly, it's shaky, it bends, it just is not the highlight of this laptop for me. I just wish they would work on that hinge just a little bit. Now, as you look at the screen, it is not color accurate. So if you're a creative professional, let's say maybe you're a video editor or a photographer or graphic designer and you need color accuracy, the standard panel that the Victus seems to come with on most models is the 60 Hertz panel. If you upgrade to the 120 or 144 Hertz panel, you'll be able to get that 99% sRGB color gamut range. And by upgrade, what I mean is check the specifications when you're purchasing the laptop to make sure it's 120 or 144 Hertz on the listing that you're purchasing from. Or if you're buying from HP Store, links in the description below, if you want to pick up this laptop, check that spec, whatever it might be, you can actually select a higher quality panel while you're customizing and purchasing the laptop. So that's what I mean by upgrade. I don't mean literally take off the panel and replace it with a new panel. I would not recommend that. Now, one thing I really enjoy about this laptop is the ability to easily upgrade it. You can just go ahead, flip it over, take off the bottom panel, and you have access to both RAM sticks and 2 M.2 drives. So it's a quick upgrade. You can take this laptop from maybe a stock 8 gigs of RAM that you purchase it with if you're balling on a budget. And then as you get a little bit more money down the road, you could upgrade it to 16 or 32. If you're a video editor or somebody working on architecture or 3D modeling, 16 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of RAM is where I would go with this laptop. If you have to buy it at 8 gigs when you're just getting started, I understand, but I think you will be disappointed in the long run if you have an 8 gig RAM laptop trying to do some heavy lifting on video editing or 3D modeling tasks, or even After Effects for that sake. I mean, sometimes the After Effects benchmark won't even run from Puget Systems if it's below 16 gigs, so just keep that in mind. Now, one thing I want to point out about this laptop, and especially compared to the HP Omen, is it just seems to hold up and look a little nicer throughout the year. I have an HP Omen here. For some reason, the black finish just doesn't look as nice over time. It gets a lot of fingerprints on it. It just kind of starts to look dull, where this silver actually ends up looking nicer over time. Just a little brighter, a little more crisp. For some reason, I just don't like the black as much. Now, this is a aluminum keyboard deck on the HP Omen, so you do have that going for you. But honestly, if they were both aluminum, I like the lighter color. It doesn't, get as many fingerprints. And they also have a white version of the HP Victus, and that would actually most likely show no fingerprints at all and look a little more crisp over time. But if I'm going for black or like this graphite gray, I really like the graphite gray. That's just kind of being a little particular. Another thing to also point out about this laptop is the one I'm reviewing right here actually has the i5 processor, and I think that's actually a good amount of power. Now, I do a full review of the HP Omen with the i7 versus this HP Victus with the i5. So if you want to watch that, I'll link it up at the end of this video. But just in general, this processor has great performance because it has really solid single-core performance. It doesn't have as much multi-core performance for multitasking. So if you're somebody who wants to, run Spotify and be Google searching and have Premiere Pro open and be editing a photo and be uploading to YouTube, you might start to bog down the computer. But if you're somebody who say just, edits a video while maybe having a Google tab open, you would be totally fine. The i5 is a great CPU. And especially if you're gonna save your money on the processor, I'd put your money into the GPU. So let's quickly jump into the benchmarks now that we've kind of covered some of the basics, and then we'll get back into a little bit more of what I like about the laptop. But since we're on the subject, if you look at the benchmarks, the RTX 3060 with the i5 can perform on par for most benchmarks because you have great single core performance and you have 6 gigs of VRAM for the GPU. So that's why I would save your money on the CPU, and if you're gonna customize this on a website, like for instance the HP Store, I would go i5 and then RTX 3060. It just allows you to get more performance for a little bit less money, which I think is a really cool snag. Now keep in mind, if you're an After Effects user, then After Effects actually seems to favor a little bit more of that multitasking, multi-core CPU. As you can see in the benchmarks, the HP Omen sits up a good bit higher than the HP Victus with the i5. So that's something you're gonna wanna consider if you're a big After Effects user, then that i7 processor will be important to you. But if you're just Premiere Pro and Photoshop's another one I was pretty impressed with, in the 900s for the Photoshop benchmark, which is awesome, then you'd be fine with the i5 and this RTX 3060. So really my main concern is gonna be 3D modeling and After Effects. If you're looking at 3D modeling and After Effects, I would go for the i7 and RTX 3060 or higher. But if you're doing Premiere Pro and Photoshop, you know, doing a lot of web browsing, maybe doing some gaming, this would be a really sweet setup. Now, another thing I really like is the SD card slot. Not a lot of laptops come with SD card slots anymore, and the HP Victus still does. You don't have to get the HP Omen, you know, the more higher end model, to get the SD card slot. Because you look at laptops like the Acer Nitro 5, no SD card slot. You look at a laptop like the G15, the G14, the M16, even the Legion 5i Pro and the Legion 5 Pro, no SD card slot. So that's a big benefit of the Victus. Now, battery life is something that I would say I'm disappointed in. Intel has not been popular for their battery life results lately, and that's still the case here with the HP Victus. Now, the pass mark productivity, which would be like, you know, running video calls, browsing the internet, maybe listening to music, it's just below 8 hours. But then when you look at video editing and Photoshop battery life, it's well below 3 hours of battery life. And it just, to me, is a little bit of a disappointment, especially when you have Ryzen processors performing so well for battery life. So just keep that in mind. If this is something you're concerned about, battery life, then I would maybe look towards a different laptop. But keep that charger along with you and you won't have any problems. Punch for punch, this is one of my favorite budget-friendly laptops on the market. It looks great, it holds up well over the past year, and it has great performance with a i5 processor and RTX 3060. I think that combination is really a nice sweet spot for most users. Now, of course, there are some drawbacks, as I mentioned, but those are things that you have to consider if they're drawbacks for you that would keep you from purchasing this laptop. Links in the description if you are ready to make a purchase, likes if this video has brought you some value, and subs if you don't want to miss out on the future uploads. I'll see you here in the next one.